Kia ora everybody. Welcome to our policy and planning hui for August. I'm going to start us off with karakia. Inu o te kainihira o Rangitike, I'm here to stand. E iho ngā mano tēnei ngā mema o te kainihira o Rangitike, te whakahoki atu nei I te reo whakamoemati mō ngā manahitanga, I whiwhi nei mātou I roto I ngā mahi pai o tēnei rohe. Manaki tia hoki mātou I roto I ngā take kei ronga I tō mātou tēpu, I roto o mātou nei hui. O tira e iho o ngā mano, ho mai, piki te ora, piki te kaha, piki te maramatanga, me te rangi marie, kia mātou ngā tangata, ngā iwi katoa, kei raro I o mātou aroaro, nō reira, ko te tūmanako, ka mahi, tahi mātou I raro I te kotahitanga mō ngā iwi katoa, kei raro I o mātou. Āmene.
Āmene.
So, as I say, welcome. I'm very happy to say that we have no apologies today because all of the sitting members are here of the council. But I'd just like to welcome Councillor Loudon and also Councillor Dalgety, who are sitting in on the hui today. It'll be good for your feed in as well.
Apology from Chris Shenton.
Sorry, I didn't see you sneak in. Came in with bells working. Sounding.
Sorry, my apologies. I'm busy working.
Aroha mai, before we go on, I just want to mahi to the people that are to the members of the public. Welcome. Welcome to our hui today. I'm not sure it's okay. So welcome. We don't have a public forum today, but I'm just welcoming people that are here. We move on to 4, conflict of interest declarations. Everybody knows what that corridor is about, so we don't need to, if there's something that does come up, happy for to take those conflicts at that time. Confirmation an order of business. I'm going to ask whether or not there's anything that needs to be changed or added to. Worship, is there anything that you'd like to?
No.
No?
Quite happy.
No? Okay, thank you very much. So I take it that everyone has been through and read our minutes. We're going to go on to 6, our confirmation of minutes. The recommendation being that the minutes of Policy Planning Committee meeting held on the 15th of June 2023 be taken as read and verified as an accurate and correct record to the meeting, and that the electronic signature of the chair of this committee be added to the official minutes document as a formal record. So are there any amendments to the minutes, please?
Happy to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you.
Happy to second.
Right, got that. I've got some choices. Worship to second or thank you. Moving right along. Oh, all those in favour, we'll just do this bit.
Aye.
Aye. If we switch into the follow-up actions, please. So if we see, we had 2 follow-up actions. Thank you, both of those have been included. One has been included in the order paper, completed, and the other one, the heritage strategy, will be reviewed in 2024. So thank you, those are both completed. So recommendation that the report for the follow-up action items from Policy Planning Committee meetings be received. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for receiving. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour say aye.
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 Very good today. Right.
Don't jinx it.
I might jinx it for the next part because we're going to go into my cheese report. So it's very short and sweet. The Policy and Planning Chair's Report for August 2023. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone both in chambers and online to our August Policy and Planning hui for the year. Just to start things off, I'd like to acknowledge Peter Beggs, our outgoing CEO, as this will be his last meeting with us. Thank you, Peter, for your leadership and guidance you have given us over the years around policy and planning, and for being an excellent advocate for our council in the Rangitiko. This month's hui is very much focused on the draft community spatial plan and the huge amount of work that has been undertaken by staff, not only in providing opportunities for the community to have their input into the strategy, but being able to bring it together in a cohesive manner. I would like to acknowledge the many residents, ratepayers and caring citizens for taking up the opportunity and having your voices heard. I also wish to thank staff for their work around providing options around the smoke vape-free policy and acknowledge the ongoing work with review of our strategic framework, the Kōwhai document. I look forward to another robust, intelligent and thoughtful meeting, and thought that this quote may bring a little smile to people's face. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. He whakatauki, te toia te haumatia. Nothing can be achieved without a plan, workforce and a way of doing things. Ngā mihi mahana, piki te ora, hiroa, chia mana. So could I just, I'd like to recommend that my report be received. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Warren. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Kia ora.
Madam Chair, can I just make a couple of comments? The first comment is thank you. It was appropriate and around thanking staff. This has been an exhaustive process. So I'd like to add my thanks, and probably everybody else is in the same boat. But I just wonder with your comment about chopping down the tree, bearing in mind that this is forestry, you spend 4 hours sharpening your axe and then you have another hour on safety briefing before you can do it.
It's a little bit of a tongue in cheek, and I thought it was quite a good thing about planning.
But yeah, thank you.
Well done. All right. Any other comments? Otherwise we can move straight into reports for decisions. Thank you. And we're going to hand this over to Katrina.
Right.
Kia ora, Katrina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose of this report is really to provide the officer analysis of submissions received on the draft community spatial plan to the Policy Planning Committee for deliberation. We ran consultation for 6 weeks during March and April earlier this year and received 187 submissions. And a number of those people also came to speak at our oral hearing. Now you'll recall that the development of the draft itself was also based on a community engagement exercise that we took during 2022. So what we've done is we've prepared a report which summarises the submission points into towns and then key themes within those towns, and provides comment and recommendations for amendments as appropriate. I would remind you it's just like annual plan deliberations, in that the recommendations sitting in there are officer recommendations. You have the opportunity as a committee to develop additional recommendations, amend the recommendations, etc., etc. So what I propose to do is work through the first 2 or 3 recommendations and then start working through the attachment page by page, hoping that you've put your comments on each page as we go, and I'm happy to kind of talk you through the officer analysis that has led to recommendations.
Thank you. You'll find of the process that Katrina has laid out for us. So in the first instance then, that the report, and I'm taking it that everyone has read this very long document, but that the recommendation 1 is that the report deliberation on submissions for the draft community spatial plan be received. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's move on. This recommendation 2 is that Council receive submissions 001 to 187 made on the draft community spatial plan. I'm happy to move that. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
Right, now my suggestion is to leave recommendations 3 and 4 and come back to them right at the end.
Just two general questions. So the report is excellent, but somewhere will there be a process as part of the report that if, for instance, somebody wants to do something that is outside of the recommendations or adopted report, that there should be a process detailing how that happens. In other words, what I would like to see is there will always be exceptional circumstances, and there is a process under the RMA to pursue them, but will there be, as part of adopting of this, a space where they say, you know, if you are outside of this, here is our advice to you. Because if we adopted it all in isolation without any advice to people around how they could progress something that isn't in effect, especially as some of them are permitted activities in essence. Will there be anything like that that goes with it?
Thank you, Katrina.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll probably need to clarify your question, Your Worship, in terms of if someone wants to do a development in the district, if that's the angle you're asking.
That could be one example. For instance, if we are saying that take a difficult one, like for instance Koitiata, where essentially we're saying that it will remain a village, and I'm just choosing a difficult one. It's not because of anything that's come to my attention, but somebody wants to do something. Is it regarded as then a prohibited activity, or then how do they go about it?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair. So the spatial plan is a non-statutory document. It's our guide of where we want to go for the future. Any specific development proposals get assessed under our district plan, which provides the objectives, policies and rules for what they can do as a right or need resource consent to do. So what the spatial plan will do is it will guide our future plan changes as council, but like what happens now, anyone could come to council with a proposal and either apply for a private plan change or put in a resource consent application to do an activity, and then that would get assessed through the Resource Management Act at the moment.
Well, thank you for that, because that's the way I see it. But do we need to actually, you know, in adopting it, put some sort of advice as part of that? Because otherwise people come and pick it up and say, I can't do that.
Yeah.
That was just the general question to think about. And the other general question as we go through this document, there are a whole lot of actions, some of them quite specific, around recommendations that we take actions. For instance, maybe opening the walkway from Mangaweka to the river, for example. Will they be then picked up as part of a long-term plan consideration and timelines? So do we need to flag as we go through that process for LTP consideration?
Thank you.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, so we've been clear throughout the whole document that this is an aspirational document and that any decision on investment will happen through our long-term planning process. So my recommendation wouldn't be that you need to do that today. It would be to go through the report and these recommendations with the knowledge that sits under there. I think every single action table has a disclaimer under it that says this is our aspiration. It would need to go through annual or long-term planning processes to be funded.
So through you, Madam Chair, the advice would be then to councillors, if there was something that comes up here as an action and they really want to pursue it, they need to advise within the LTPP.
Yeah, and also if there's action sitting in there that feel not currently funded through our long-term plan, we kind of put that aside in our spatial planning work and we deal with that through our long-term planning work. This is around the aspirations and where we want to go for the future of our communities.
Thank you. I just think it's helpful for councillors to realise where it fits.
Your Worship, any other feedback into that? If not, we can come back to you to take us through.
Right, well, we'll start working through from the introduction. I won't go through in too much detail around pages 15, 16, 17. although I did have a query from Councillor Lambert previously around percent of population. It varies, so it's really hard to figure that number for some of the smaller communities, just with the data we have easy access to. But it's pretty low. For the communities where we got no responses, 0%. And the highest is probably around 10%. But say district-wide, we're sitting about 1.2%. So it is pretty low.
Thank you for that.
Okay, now we'll start moving through from page 19 through bills. So this is going to be something that's going to come up commonly throughout the report. What we did in many of our communities was ask them to prioritise key themes that were in their section of the community spatial plan, and the recommendations that sit under them are to reorder those themes in order of priority. So recommendation 5 sitting with you is to reorder the themes for bills to reflect the community prioritisation.
Just a question from me, Katrina, how do you envisage us, are you going to take us through, you're going to take us through every one of the points, and how do you just want us to feed in once we get to a part?
Yeah, my recommendation is to ask questions as we go and then do your recommendations and resolutions as we go. So my recommendation now would be if anyone's prepared to deal with that.
I'm happy to make a recommendation based on your explanation.
And I'm happy to second.
Page 20.
All those in favour say aye. Carry.
Okay, great. And so as we move through, given our time this afternoon, I'll take a lot of things as read, but do, if we get to a section, ask a question, or if there's somewhere where you think we need an extra action. Okay. So key theme 1 for Bulls Transport Network improvements, I'll take the commentary as read. I haven't recommended any changes to key theme 1 for Bulls.
Just a question from me. This is in terms of the key theme 2 on page 21. Noting that above it, 5.2, community-led development of Bulls Domain is identified as a priority. Do you need to link that also into the recommendation? Do you need to be specific against that recommendation, against that advice?
Three things here. So if we move to key theme 2, connection with open space, some of the comments we received were around the importance of other open spaces. The commentary I noted is that the Bulls Domain was specifically identified as a priority, but other green spaces were not. So that's where that recommendation has come from, is to add a new priority around parks and reserves generally, aligning with the Parks and Reserves and Open Spaces strategy. There was no recommendation from me to amend the priority around the Bulls Domain.
Okay. Happy on that basis.
Councillors got any questions?
No.
Right. Okay, well, we have a mover for recommendation 6.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson and
I'll
Councillor
second
Lambert.
you.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Hilda.
And then the next recommendation under key theme 2 for Bulls was a comment from the Te Araroa Trail Trust, noting that the trail hadn't been referenced in the Bulls section at all. So my recommendation is to add further commentary and show the trail on the maps associated with Bulls.
Yeah, happy to move, happy to support that.
Thank you. Engari, we've just got a question from...
And happy to second, but I just really would like to support this. This is a real potential for our district, even though it's just slicing down one little edge of us in a way. This trail is becoming more and more important, so I'm really pleased to see this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. So, read one perspective. Yeah.
I'd just like consider whether councillors want to include a reflection on the Santoff domain, which is part and parcel of that, supporting that.
That's a good point.
I'd just move that as a slight amendment to that, to include reference to the Santoff domain. The work that's been done there has been superb.
So I feel like I don't know how I've got to do this because these two.
So you put that amendment to a vote,
Yes.
and if it was supported, then it goes back into full
Thank you.
reading.
So the second part to include reference to the Santoff domain, it's been moved by His Worship and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye. Carried. And then we go back up to the first one, and so. So that's already been moved and seconded, and so all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
So that's been carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Now before we move on to key theme 3, just checking that there's no further comments on key theme 2, please. Okay, we'll keep going. Key theme 3, housing growth. So we're moving on to page 22, and there were quite a few comments received on this section, and I'll take those comments, summary of comments and officer comment largely as read. As we head down, there is an officer recommendation on one of the future growth areas. So one of the landowners below one had requested that their property was reconsidered as commercial rather than residential. So currently their property is sitting in a assessed for suitability for residential growth. You'll see I've provided some analysis and commentary for you there. From a technical perspective, I really consider the best use of the site as residential, however, could see the use of the site for specified commercial activities, also providing appropriate outcomes for the community as long as it was managed really carefully. However, what I'll set out is that a commercial rezoning would be really problematic under the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land. So where my recommendation ended for you to consider is that we simply added additional commentary around a desire to work with that landowner about the future rezoning of that site.
The question through you, Madam Chair, in terms of your response to submitters, where they've asked an absolute direct question for a service to be provided, does council need to make a yes/no decision to support that as part of this? So, for instance, if you have a submitter in this case saying we want the council to provide free surveying of housing land, do we need to be that specific to be able to reply, for you to reply, or?
Thank you.
My advice is not necessarily. I've certainly put some officer comments, and one of the recommendations we skipped earlier on was around this report becoming the council response to submissions, so that those submitters can see the commentary that council has accepted. So if there is any commentary sitting in here that you strongly dislike or disagree with, as we move through before you get to that recommendation, then we'll note that as we go.
Any input around this, please?
I'm happy so long as we don't have to specifically reply, that I don't have somebody then coming back and say, I've asked this question and I haven't had an answer. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm the same one, yeah. Happy on that level.
Okay, then we're going to move on with recommendation 8. Can I have a mover for that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Seconded, please. Councillor Wilson, second. All those in favour say aye. Ordered. Carried.
Great, so the next area as we keep moving down is a recommendation around Bull 07. So Bull 07 is an identified area that has been assessed for rural lifestyle growth down Parawinui Road, kind of south of Ferry Road.
What number is that? What, five, we walked through?
5.76 on page 29.
Can I just have a point of clarification, backing up the truck a little bit?
Yeah.
5.39, it says there that council, and this is with regards to bulls, it says council currently provides a remission for new builds as part of the rates remission policy. Now, I understood that was no longer the case for the southern part of the district. Do you have clarification around that?
No, that's excellent point, Councillor. I can definitely clarify that.
Just to, I seem to remember something of that being said as well.
Okay, I can make that amendment, definitely. We're up to 5.76 below 7. So Submitter 107 Horticulture New Zealand suggested that the area shouldn't actually be identified as moderate suitability or a possible growth area for rural lifestyle development. So I've gone back and re-looked at the rankings under that growth area. Originally, it was identified as moderate suitability rather than low suitability given the level of fragmentation within the area. But the reality is that unless the area is deemed to be not highly productive when Horizons do their mapping exercise, it would be unable to be rezoned for rural lifestyle. So I've recommended that it's reclassified as low suitability.
This is the area to the coastal side of Ferry Road, isn't it? Yep.
Any discussion about this point?
I have one question, Katrina. This is one submitter that we take their view and change a whole, make a recommendation. Do we get feedback from other submitters to the contrary view, or I don't know? It just seems extreme to make a recommendation based on one person. You might have a vote to row somewhere else.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. We didn't receive any other submissions on below 7. That was the one submission on below 7. What it did do was make me go and re-look at the area and assessment, and in doing that, I have changed my recommendation. That doesn't always happen. So you'll note earlier in the report, for below 5, I haven't recommended any changes to that area as a result of the submissions. But certainly it's up to the elected members as to what you might wish to do.
Can I just say thank you for that question, because that's a really important question in my head. And when you go through this, having gone through this, a lot of things that have been put into it are actually from an individual point of view. And I just want to go back to what was asked at the very beginning when we looked at how many submissions actually came in conjunction and looking at the bigger picture of 15,000 plus people that live in this district. So I think that was a really good question. Your Worship, did you have something to add into this?
Just remember, it's not only just about submitters. For instance, we've had operational guidance in terms of infrastructure as to how difficult it is to put infrastructure into that space. So there's been a whole lot of staff input into literally where, from the ease of providing services. And with regard to this block on the other side of Ferry Road, which is currently zoned urban, there is unused space there, but we don't have a network that extends past there. So that was part of the driver for that when this conversation first came out, as to where you want that town to go. There's a whole lot of other factors in the spatial plan thinking around walkability to shops, all of those sorts of things. It's not just on the basis of one submitter.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I'm happy to move recommendation 9.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Right, now before we move on to key theme 4, I'll just pause there for any outstanding questions on key theme 3, which is housing for goals. Okay, we'll keep going. Key theme 4, traveller destination and vibrant town centre. I'll take the summary and officer comment as read. I haven't recommended any changes to key theme 4 as a result. And then likewise for key theme 5, business growth, I'll take that section as read. I haven't recommended any changes to key theme 5 for goals. Okay, we're now headed on to page 31. Key theme 6, supporting infrastructure. Likewise, I'll take that section as read. I haven't proposed any changes to key theme 6.
So recommendation 10, I'm happy to move that the reordered themes are sense of community, better transport, meet housing demand and antique and boutique destination. Seconder, please.
I'll be second that one.
Councillor Lindbergh. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Held up.
Right, okay, let's keep moving. We're into Hunterville now. In terms of key theme 1, antique and boutique destination, I haven't recommended any changes. I take that section as read. We're on to page 34 now. Key theme 2, sense of community. I have recommended action as amended. Quite rightly, one of the submitters identified that Ngāpuhi or Rangitike hadn't been adequately included, and that comment actually applies throughout the whole document. So you'll see various recommendations throughout as we move through this afternoon. So I've recommended amendment to action 2.3 for Hunterville. That amendment is the part underlined.
Any feedback? Otherwise, we'll put it straight up for a mover for that recommendation, please.
I'll move.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Moore, seconded to Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No, carried.
Right, and then sitting under key theme 2, I also have a recommendation around additional commentary and priority around the Porewa stream, which is submitted, provided some useful comments around its potential and its importance.
Moved by Councillor
Thank you,
Wilson.
Madam Chair. This is where my comments came around actions, that if somebody was going to take this forward to an LTP, that it's actually a specific action in terms of improving connection. Might take on board. It's just up to councillors to progress them if they want.
Feedback, please.
No, sorry. I didn't hear what you said earlier, so sorry.
Okay, so were you happy to move that, Your Worship?
Yeah. Yep.
Seconded, please, for recommendation 12.
It was the
I think David already.
David's already.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
mayor
mind.
seconded.
Yeah.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, carried. Recommendation 13.
So we jump through key theme 3, better transport. I haven't recommended any changes as a result. I'll take that section as read. Under key theme 4, meet housing demand. Again, housing, there's a lot of commentary and officer comment. I'll talk you through the next recommendation, which is focused on Hun 01, which is an area to the west of Ongo Road. I have reassessed that area as a result of the submitter comments raised. Initially, the topography rating I had as green, but in consideration of the submissions raised, I'm proposing it's amended to yellow, which does also lead to a recommendation to reduce that suitability from high to moderate for Hano 1.
Thank you. Any feedback? Any feedback from the Huntable
Yeah, no, it's,
councillors?
Yeah, I'm just interested in this process in terms of looking at the Huns. That is the one that is probably the most favourable. And then we get a submitter who, is pointing out that it's not perfect. So it's challenging if someone does want to put grow the population like we do in Huntable. I guess that's my comment.
Context. That's a really useful comment, Councillor Dalgety. Hunterville is really challenging in terms of providing for future growth. In terms of these assessment ratings, Hano 1 would still be the top ranking area in Hunterville. The other areas we looked at are identified as low suitability. And what we'd do through our district plan review, so phase 1 of our district plan review, would be to investigate the areas further. So undertake that detailed assessment to really flesh out whether or not it's viable for future housing growth.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert, did you?
Oh, no, I was just going to reiterate what Councillor Dalgety said, like, and as Trent's pointed out, there is limited space around Hunterville for housing growth, so yeah, we don't want to get too particular if we do want growth in the area.
Yes.
Yes.
A question on the proposed subdivision already indicated in Huntable. What's the suitability of that land?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. That area that I believe you're talking about is already zoned as residential, so we haven't assessed it for suitability under this process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trina, for those clarifying that. Recommendation 13, we're going to, if there is no amendments, from what we can all see on the screen, can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried. Recommendation 14.
Yeah, so in the miscellaneous section, we did get a comment around council's role in the health area and in terms of mobile health services. So I have suggested an action as included around advocating for a mobile health service.
Anyone got any feed into this? Because I have.
Yeah, you're the chair.
So what I do know is that out of Stewart Street, they in Ngāti Apa who now own that doctor's surgery, I know that they definitely have a mobile health service. So it would be it will be a good thing that I'm just thinking for myself to take on this. I'm happy to take on this korero and take that back, whether or not it's our job to the council's job to advocate for mobile health service. There actually is an existing mobile health service, but what may not yet, whether they've hooked into Huntable, I'm not sure. So maybe to follow up on that.
And this is a reminder as well that these recommendations are simply officer recommendations.
I absolutely agree with you, Madam Chair, but I must admit I question whether this is the right venue for these conversations to actually come to the table.
Yeah.
This is a spatial plan as to how we use land use, and we run the risk of cluttering it with all sorts of other information around advocacy that is outside of the parameters of land use. I don't have any objection because I admire the principle, but I tend to think in my mind it should be a far purer process around spatial plan, rather than, I request all sorts of other things that are not about land use.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any comments about Your Worship's comments? I've got a comment to that. That I'd just like to pass on. So, again, it comes back to the understanding of our community. If they don't understand that, they're going to put in, and if you, for all of us have seen what has been put in, people will put in anything, which is pretty much what's happened. So that, taking on board what you've said, that means for us, in my head, that means the communication needs to be better put out, or in a way where people are going to understand it more. But I believe if you're going to give people an opportunity to have a voice, they're going to have a voice whether we want to keep it as pure as possible or not. So
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I wonder is that whether there's any potential process for us to transfer a request to an appropriate process where we can actually deal with it.
yeah,
Otherwise, it'll just sit there. So if we were actually going to advocate on with regard to this behalf, then maybe some of these recommendations should come back for council consideration as to how we can actually help.
thank you.
Otherwise, it goes nowhere.
Thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Chair, I hear what you're saying, but I would just pose that the submission for the draft annual plan, the spatial plan, was also on the same document that we sent out to with our annual plan, and I think perhaps there is some crossover that has occurred when this would be like the wish that the Mayor is suggesting, is possibly more on an annual plan side of thing consideration. I think that maybe there's some crossover that's when it's fallen into the spatial plan space, and perhaps that may be where the confusion has arisen.
Thank you.
I totally agree with His Worship and with Councillor Wilson, but I want to say that so that they have made their way into here. So it's really our the way we have handled the submissions that is the problem, perhaps, and that maybe they should have been separated a bit more clearly. But I just also want to say that that doesn't mean that this comment isn't very valid and needed. So I would like to support His Worship's saying that the risk is that it just sits there. It'd be really nice to see that it doesn't sit there and that we deal with it as
So
best we can.
thank you. Before we move on then, in lieu of that comment, is there a recommendation that you'd like to make, Your Worship? Because given that there's a whole lot more to come.
Yeah, I think the recommendation would be to request staff to look at recommendations, submissions that have been made that should be dealt with in another avenue. I'm just struggling. I'd have to really think about how this could actually play out, to be honest. Could I take some time to come back to this?
Yes. We're okay with that.
And maybe staff could have a think around it and as a general practice. So I don't want to put a recommendation that is adopted that becomes very difficult to get workability.
Yes.
Worship, Chair, could the recommendation 14 simply be listed as a follow-up action? And the earlier part of our report that this moved to a follow-up action for the next, would that be too far out, Your Worship, for you to see that get captured? Just seeing that it's captured somewhere.
I think Ms Gray is so skilled in this area that she might be able to work out the best way of giving us guidance afterwards.
Thank you. I'm sure the Huntable councillors will make sure it doesn't drop off the list.
Thank you. I just feel that there's going to be a number of them as we go through this that will sit in that space. So how do we? I too support that. How do we not to take them off the boil, but how do we put them in a place that they can be? Come back to. Anyone else got anything to say, or can we come back to you?
I was just going to make a comment, that in these sort of matters that where there are existing services and things like that may be seen to be potentially the appropriate ways in order to deal with such matters as these requests like this. We've always got to have a mind for collaborating with our community, collaborating with our existing businesses, wherever they might be, and ensuring that, it's all that competitive stuff that we've got to be conscious of as we consider these things, eh?
You're right, Madam Chair, there's a number of them through the document. There's a number of references, for instance, you go to Mangueka and there's a whole lot of speed references in there, about people moving through the town at speed and those sorts of things. I just think there must be an easier way to progress the community's wishes. And the speed one's easy because you're going through a review, but
Thank you, Your Worship.
So my recommendation is that we note the ones that we go through as we go through, and then by the end we'll come back to you with a suggested process of how we deal with them all. But if we just note them down as we go through and then deal with them all right at the end.
Okay, so what we are saying is that recommendation 14 is one of those to be noted.
So we'll just keep moving through. Okay, we're now on to page 40, Kongaroa. We received no submissions from Kongaroa, and no changes to this section are recommended.
And saying that we'll go straight into the recommendation 15, that the themes are reordered Kotiata as follows.
can I just ask, with Kaingaroa, we didn't receive any submissions, but we have had previously requests under the LTP and annual plans for possible relocation of the for instance, the marae and houses. So we can't, because it isn't submitted, we can't do anything there in that spatial plan, or do we, or can we note in the spatial plan a concern that has been raised around the possible need to relocate in the future? Just, is there any advice you can give me there?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it does make it difficult to make changes at this stage that aren't as a result of submissions, particularly if they are substantial. I would point you to one of the priorities, which does talk about increasing resilience and reducing risk to residents in the Marae from flooding associated with the Wangaihu River.
Okay, that's fine then. If it's there, covered that way, then I'm fine. Thank you.
There's no other questions, we're going to move on to Kotiata.
So the first recommendation is around reordering the priorities based on community feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Happy to move. Seconded, please. Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay. For some of these smaller communities, we did ask a specific question around the vision. We received a number of comments. I'll take them as read for Koitiata. As a result, I haven't proposed any changes to the vision. Then we move into key theme 1, access to open space and nature. One of the items raised from the community, also raised in the annual plan, was around development of a reserve management plan for the reserves out there, of effectively taking our response from the annual plan, but also recommended that this could be an action in the community spatial plan as well, to work alongside the community and key stakeholders to develop a reserve management plan. Noting what we mentioned before around timing and prioritisation of these things. The commentary does note timeframes would be dependent on council resourcing and funding.
I'm happy to move that recommendation, that first recommendation along the reserve management plan.
Thank you, Bishop. Seconded, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Linda. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, in terms of key theme 2, sense of community, we received one comment. I'll take the comment and officer response as read and propose no changes. We're on to page 43, key theme 3, community facilities. Now, there were a few comments around concern about the use of the word consider when referencing rezoning the Kuatiata domain as open space. I've suggested an amendment is made that references recommend rezoning the domain as part of the implementation of the open space zone for the district. So we don't actually have the open space zone. We will need to implement one at some stage.
Yeah, that was, I'm happy with that, but I was noting the same thing. We don't have that as a description of a zone in a zone. So therefore, we would have to draft a whole lot of rules around how the zone is used. So that, would you need another recommendation to say that council will draft, consult with the community around, or how would you do that?
Through you, Madam Chair, with our upcoming district plan review, as officers, we would be coming back to you and recommending that we implement an open space zone that applies across the whole district. And many of our parks and reserves are effectively within the zone that they're next to, which has created a number of problems for us, particularly in the recent past, when we're looking at developing those spaces. So it would just form part of that wider open space zone plan change.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Is there such a thing at the moment in other districts? Yes. So it's not what we're not inventing the wheel. We're just adapting a tool. Thank you.
Where they're used in other districts, they generally become a prohibited activity in terms of some things like housing, etc.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, would need to look at what the permitted, all the different activity statuses would be associated with an open space zone. So that would form all part of that plan change process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm happy to move that, but I just wonder in that case, seeing we haven't got an open space zone, perhaps that should be in quotation marks for the purposes of this recommendation. And then I'm happy to move.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no worries.
Your Worship, did you, sorry, I feel like initially you moved this, am I right? You didn't.
No, I'm happy because Adair's staff put some clarification around exactly what the rules are within the open space zone. It becomes a non-entity, so they're going to have to come back anyway.
Thank you. Well, in lieu of that, Councillor Duncan has moved. The recommendation is seconded, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye. I would like to say that I may just look at some other councillors when it comes to moving and seconding. So,
We're only a small committee, Madam Chair.
So the hint Andy should shut up.
right.
Okay, great. And then the next recommendation, I do have an amended recommendation for you. Since this was published, some of the community noted that the toilets and showers had been already done, so that recommendation didn't need to be there. The part that I did miss, and I think does have merit, is around replacing that rather than simply removing it with the text. Just find it and replace with invest in enhancements to the campground.
Yes, your Worship.
Sorry. And this is another one. This isn't about a spatial plan use. This is almost like a request for service. Now, we have parks and reserves policies around maintenance and upgrades and so on. So, I'm quite happy with it being pulled out because it's been done anyway. But it's just, to my mind, not quite in the right place.
Could you just give us a minute? What's showing on the screen isn't quite right.
Easy to use.
What's in the minutes is different from what's on the screen.
Yes, that's, the campground on the public.
We'll just clarify the recommendation and potentially through you, Madam Chair, while Kezia works on that. One thing to have a think about is this is a community spatial plan. So we did put in the word community to reflect the community plan aspect of the spatial plan. So not everything already sitting in here in the draft is true land use spatial planning. Some of the actions that are already sitting in there are that community plan side in it. So take that into consideration as well when you are moving through these decisions. Usually not well-being, but the existing document is quite broad.
Yep.
Any other feedback? That's awesome.
Thank you, Chair. Taking on board what Katrina has just said, I do tend to agree with the earlier comment by His Worship the Mayor that I'm not really sure that it sits in the right space. We do have a place, an open places policy and infrastructure where we're trying to tie all these things in together. And it comes back to the earlier one, how do we capture this? And maybe this is another one that sits in that earlier camp. So I tend to support the comment by His Worship the Mayor on that.
Any other feedback, councillors? Otherwise, what I suggest is like the one to do with the mobile health services. We put that into the put that into that space. Is that okay? Yes. All right. Well, that's what we're going to do. That's going to be in the follow-up, isn't it?
Right, okay. We'll move through to key theme 4, infrastructure and transport. So there were a number of comments around cell phone connectivity. We do have that sitting as a priority, but we didn't have any associated actions. So that is an oversight. So the recommendation is to take it in as into an action as well. And this action is common to other communities as well. I believe Scott's Ferry has a very similar action.
Feedback from councillors? Okay, somebody, Worship, have you got anything to add into this?
Keep my head down for a little while.
Okay, thank you.
So a comment, I guess, comments that I'm receiving, it would seem certainly around Hunterville, our connectivity is getting worse rather than better. I don't know what the reason for that is, but that other people, I'm experiencing that, and other people agree.
Yes, councillor.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm thinking, isn't next year New Zealand supposed to be 100% cell phone coverage? So.
Cell phone coverage in Northumberland. Have you been?
Well, maybe next year, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, if anyone hasn't, is there any other comment on this, around this recommendation?
Again, I'm talking again. I don't know that this one sits in the right space either. Sorry, it's just. I mean, even though it's community and spatial plan, I mean we, we're often through other avenues in contact with telecommunications providers, not much as we are in communication with our state highway network providers and Waka Kotahi on many matters. And this one here, I think, gets lost in this document. We're always advocating for better cell phone coverage, and it falls into economic development. It's connectivity on a number of things. It's just not quite in the right space here. But how do we pull it out and get it somewhere where it gets captured? It's a similar one to a couple of others that we've mentioned.
Councillor Duncan?
I hear what Councillor Wilson's saying, but I'm thinking that spatially, for us to use our district, this is a priority. And in fact, I think it should be in all our plans, because without connectivity as we go forward, we won't be able to use the space. to some degree, especially when we have on our COFI that we are going to have more technology in the farming sector and in all our industries. This connectivity is absolutely crucial. So I would like to see it here, but I'd also like to see it everywhere.
Yeah, so I can provide some comment through you, Madam Chair. We do have digital connection as a key theme in our overarching Rangiteke section, and then where it's been pulled into individual communities is where those communities have raised that as a key concern. So Kotiata has been one of them. It doesn't feature in all of our specific community sections.
Next steps, please. Are these two opposing, well, not opposing, but just two thoughts? One, we go in with your feedback, Councillor Duncan, more or less I'm thinking that is you're looking to move the motion.
I'm happy to move.
And, but before you're happy to move that, but just to say that Councillor Wilson is looking potentially to put it into the follow-up.
I'm happy as long as it's captured. I agree with the importance that's been pointed out by my fellow councillor, just as long as it's captured.
Thank you. Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lambert, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, and then moving on to the miscellaneous section, the Te Araroa Trust requested that the trail was added to the map for Kotiata. So officers agree that adding the map, the trail to the map would provide value, so that's where that recommendation's come from.
Can I have a move, please?
Heavy move.
Thank you.
Second.
Councillor Moore has moved.
Fighting for it now.
Yeah.
Councillor Shenton has.
Councillor
Shenton.
Right,
The
jeez.
Mr. Shenton has seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Councillor Morn moved, not Councillor Lambert.
Well, Councillor Lambert was quick.
And Mr. Shenton, yeah. All those in favour say aye. Okay. Karohama, we will get to you, Councillor Lambert.
No, I want to have the name up there.
Just a comment, we've been working with Araroa Trail Trust and all that sort of stuff on these matters in terms of Bridget Mongohu and potentially one at Turakina and all these sorts of things, so, yeah. And there's the potentials to link up with other things within the Santos Forest and these enhancements along the way, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Great, well moving on to Mangaweka, page 46. Again, the recommendation you have is recommendation 21 is reordering based on community prioritisation of the theme.
Move for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, and then moving through key theme 1 and key theme 2, I'll take as read. I haven't recommended any changes. And as we get to key theme 3, housing growth, again, I'll take that as read. I haven't recommended any changes.
Any feedback? Otherwise, I'm happy to move that.
And then we get to key theme 4, transport link. The first recommendation is around identifying the priorities within the community around active mobility pathways. So they were clear in the community meeting that we had that a walkway or cycleway from the village to the campground was a top priority, and also provided comments, one of the submitted provided comments on the potential of the rail tunnels. So I thought that additional commentary could be useful in the action.
Feedback, please.
Yeah,
Michelle.
this recommendation effectively for me picked up the key themes: 1, visitor destination, natural built and heritage, etc. That's rolled into that. So that's, I saw you addressing that as there, so I was quite happy.
Yeah,
Any other feedback?
that's a good idea.
Okay, so can we have a mover for that recommendation, please?
I'll move again.
Councillor Lambert, Councillor Duncan. Seconded. All those in favour say aye. Carried.
Now, before we move on, were there any more comments around Mangaweka?
I was just going to comment how high visitor destination showed up in their thing compared to the others. I was quite impressed.
Moving on.
Okay, moving on to Martin. The first recommendation we've got there is around reordering the themes for priority. On to page 50 now.
I'll move before that, please. Thank you, councillor Watson. Councillor Duncan. Seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, then moving on to key theme 1, town centre revitalisation. I'll take the summary and officer comment as read. There is one recommendation I had from an officer perspective, which is around storytelling. It's not something that was identified in the draft action plan, but could provide positive outcomes as part of town centre regeneration. So I've suggested including that.
Feedback, please.
Yeah, when I first looked at this, I was a little bit surprised because I actually couldn't tie it to a submission easily, but I actually tie it back to the promise that we had made in an annual plan about telling the story of cultures, and I wondered if that was part of it. But I'm okay with it being there, but I just couldn't see immediately the tie.
Any other comments from councillors or Mr. Shenton?
Yes, I was very pleased to see this as well, because I remember on several occasions the discussion around telling all the stories. And I see that actually perhaps it is 10.13 that comments are creating a welcoming, and just in there it says it suggests an increase in storytelling as a way of creating a welcoming and connected community, if that makes helps. And I also want to say how great it was to see the number of submissions around this, because there have been times where there hasn't been so much engagement, so it was really, really good to see.
Thank you. Any other comments?
One for me, Chair, if I may, just very quickly, if you want an example of it in reality, in practicality, a walk up and down the main street of Foxton, you will see an example of storytelling and plaques on the footpath that make you stop and look, and often they are pictures of buildings or places or spaces that are no longer there, but it tells you what was there in the history and meaning behind it. So that's just if you want to see it in action, it's an easy thing to do, and supportive of the recommendation.
Move it for the recommendation, please. Councillor Duncan. Sure.
Well, I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Shenton. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, so moving through to key theme 2, high quality infrastructure. There's quite a few comments and officer comments there that I'll take as read. As a result of them, I hadn't recommended any changes to the draft document. Okay, key theme 3, thriving local economy. Again, I'll take the submissions and officer comment as read. I haven't recommended any changes to key theme 3. You will note in there's a specific request around rezoning of certain properties around Martin. The appropriate process for doing that would be through a district plan review process.
Any questions? Otherwise, we're trying to move on. Sorry, Your Worship. Looking at this.
We had a huge number of submissions about water quality and so on. There's no recommendation attached to the spatial plan around those issues. But this is, to me, is almost a note as to how we respond if needed somewhere else. You know, it's almost just because of the sheer volume that I think it's difficult just to pass without accepting that there's been so many submissions. So, you know, if that is seen as the limitation for growth in terms of how do you deal with it? Because we've actually just really chosen to ignore it.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we haven't chosen to ignore it. We do have water quality and our three waters already identified in our draft spatial plan as a priority, and then we already have associated actions. So we've already got it covered. So there was no recommendation because it's already sitting in there in terms of the items that the submitters have raised.
So, you know, when we go back out to the community, and they say adopted all the spatial plans and so on, it's to me it's almost like a note. How do you say to the community, thank you for all your submissions with regard to this issue, but it is being dealt with somewhere. So maybe to me it's almost like some form of advice, like we've been noting earlier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Wilson.
Is it not a response back to our existing water strategy, which has been quite well detailed? Although, having said it's been quite well detailed, it's only just recently probably been highlighted more to the community that we have this water strategy, which has been in place for a number of years. And now that we're developing the bores and the works that we're doing, we need to reference that back to some of these submitters that work does exist, because that water strategy has that tied into it. So there's possibly a link back.
It's already in there, right?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, my recommendation would be where we point them back to is the officer comment, so 10.24, which notes that the importance of water quality is already stated as a priority in this section. We talk about the implementation of the Marlin Water Strategy being underway. And that kind of detail. So if there's additions you'd like to change to that as our response, we can certainly do that.
So just to get some clarity, the reason that you're not, there's not necessary officer comments or recommendations is because it's actually the document. It's already, those things have already been placed in the document. And I think, Your Worship, that you're pointing that out in case people are just going off what the recommendations that are coming out of the meeting today, but actually a lot of the things that are being brought up are already part of that document.
When I read this, I may well have missed 10.24. So you accept that it's there.
And that certainly as we work through, because the recommendation will sit there, that this becomes your response to submissions. If you feel that there's something that's not adequately in there, that we work through that as we go, so we can amend that for our response to
So no,
submissions.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
So you've just answered my question, which was really to clarify the fact that all submitters will have a response, which will include officer comment. Thank you.
Okay, key theme 3, thriving local economy, we just did. There were no officer recommendations there. Key theme 4, high quality community facilities. We're moving on to page 55. You will note this is a section that did get quite a lot of crossover with our annual plan process. So the officer comments refer for the Civic Centre, for example, to their annual plan process and the decisions made around there. Overall, I didn't recommend any changes to key theme 4.
Happy to move on. Thank you.
Key theme 5, connection with the natural environment. Again, I'll take that as read. I haven't recommended any changes to key theme 5. Again, this is, like many of them, the comments raised are ones that are already included in the document or annual plan matters.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to key theme 6, transport improvements, onto page 57 and then onto 58. Now the officer recommendation there is a response to a query raised from a submitter around an active mobility pathway along Station Road. Now I went back and I looked at our active mobility pathway map and could see benefits of connecting in Station Road. It's got quite a wide berm there. It's a frequently used link, particularly for students as well. So I've recommended that it's added to the map as an active mobility pathway.
Any comments, Your Worship?
Happy to move.
Seconder, please. Right, thank you. Councillor Lambert, Councillor Lambert, please. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Just one question there. So when you say it's included
Excuse me.
as an active mobility pathway, because it is currently used as such, but not that it's formalised as such. When you say it's, or that it says that an active mobility pathway is included, does that mean that we are going to build one, or that it is? Yeah, see what I mean? Just a little bit of clarification.
Yeah, so the recommendation is that it's included effectively on this map or the map on page 101. There might be other maps in the Marlin section that it becomes relevant. Now, we'll recall that the active mobility pathways, again, are very aspirational. There's no commitment from council to build any of them or funding, but these are the aspirational kind of shared pathways. Active mobility pathways providing for all frames of movement, scooters, bikes, cycles, but certainly that there's no full plan to implement these. These are aspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To me, it's almost recognising that we have a footpath. I know that it goes a step further, but we do have a pathway there, and it's called a footpath, but it's not for active mobility for scooters and everything else, but it's used that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I can provide some clarification on that. The intention and the side of the road that we would put that down would be on the opposite side of the road. And yeah, the active mobility pathways do go a step further than simple footpaths.
Yeah, just can I make a comment on that? But further to that too, if we've got it on our plan and we've acknowledged it as being part of the plan, if we were to look at some infrastructural upgrades on that, we might look at that footpath, we might look at that curb and tailing, we might say, okay, hang on, let's make this a shared pathway, let's make it a bit wider, let's just realign that road a little bit, bearing in mind that we do have the space on the other side. Can we get that angle out a little bit better, and can we incorporate a shared pathway in there by adopting the existing footpath? So if it's on your plan and it's acknowledged as being in there, then there's a chance that gets picked up with some future infrastructure, which may be 10, 15 years down the line, who knows? But there's a chance that it gets picked up if it's there.
Thank you.
You
That's
know.
awesome. Arno, did you have something to put into the school?
Thank you, Nancy. Yes. Also, when we apply for funding, it's super important. If you can show to the funder that it's tied into spatial plans and other long-term goals, then it makes funding much more easy to.
Great. Yeah, we have done that one. Great, okay, now we're moving on to the next key theme, which is focused on housing. And this is quite a big section with lots of summaries and officer comments. Where that's all led to is a recommendation from me around rejigging the action. To provide more detail, it actually aligns it better to the actions sitting in our other towns and settlements, and builds in some more of those themes that were identified from submitters. So it would be amending action 7.1, and then by doing that you actually have already incorporated action 7.2, 7.3 and 7.4. So the recommendation would be to delete those.
That's on.
Yeah, move.
Oh. Thank you. So we've got a mover, a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Great, and then the next one, we're on to page 64 now, is an administrative error identified, where the incorrect labelling was given for some of the growth areas in the matrix tables. So the recommendation is to correct those.
Thank you.
Happy to move.
Moved by His Worship, seconder please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Shenton. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried.
Right, and then the next section moves us through into our growth areas. So we received quite a few comments on our different growth areas. We'll work through them one at a time. The first one is around MAR 01. Now MAR 01 is the growth area to the north, up Turanui Road of Martin. Now we had 2 submitters from that growth area submit in support of Maro 1 being reassessed. So effectively that's what I've done. I've gone as a result of those submissions, I've reassessed those matrix assessments, and it's resulted in me recommending that 2 criteria are amended. So walkability would be amended from red to yellow, and connectivity would be amended from yellow to green. And as a result of that revised assessment, I'd recommend that area becomes a high suitability area. It's currently sitting as moderate. And you'll see in 10.117 the table with my commentary next to it.
I'm happy with that. So I'm happy to move the Maro 1, Martin 01 recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan is happy to.
Sorry?
Second,
Yes,
please.
happy to second, yes, sorry.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. So moving on from Maro 1, the next 2 to look at are Maro 2 and Maro 7. Maro 2 is an area along Wanganui Road that was assessed for residential. Maro 7 is the area along Johnson Road that was assessed for rural lifestyle. The submitter had requested that part of Maro 7, so part of the rural lifestyle area, was incorporated as part of Maro 2. So you'll see on page 68 of your agenda, my assessment of that. Effectively, I've said I can see benefit of considering that parcel as residential. It's the one that connects Maro 1 and Maro 2 growth areas, and it could support a better holistic development in that area should they become the priority growth areas. And it also kind of segregates the class 2 from the lower class soils as well. So I have recommended splitting those areas in 2, and I've provided you with an assessment of that matrix table for the proposed MAR 15, with a final recommendation that Maro 7 split into the 2 growth areas, and that Maro 7 remains assessed as moderate and MAR 15 becomes moderate. No, MAR 07 is residential moderate and MAR 15 lifestyle moderate.
Thank you. Any feedback?
Again, with this one, I'm happy to move. It makes sense for me in terms of a connection between Maro 2 and Maro 1.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to see it.
Thank you.
For the same reason.
Councillor Wingott, second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Carried.
The next one that I will reference, it doesn't have a recommendation sitting around it, is Maro 8. So there was a request from that landowner around noting that they wish to divide that property, so supported its potential rezoning. Now, unfortunately for this property, and it's a common theme that will come in the next part of the reports, is that a key part of its rationale for being assessed as low suitability is the National Policy Statement on Highly Productive Land, which states that we're not allowed to rezone highly productive land for lifestyle purposes. So unless that area becomes reassessed under the Horizons mapping process, officers are recommending, well, there's no recommendation. I haven't provided a recommendation because it's effectively that remains as low suitability.
Feedback? Any?
Just a question, so it's low suitability based on that factor alone? Or is there other factors that you would consider to be low suitability?
Yeah, so there's a range of factors affecting all of these rural lifestyle growth areas, but the highly productive land is the key one that automatically puts it from a officer recommendation into that low suitability category. Should the regional mapping exercise result in any of our rural lifestyle, low suitability areas not being assessed as highly productive land, then we would go and relook at those areas in relation to all of the criteria.
So it's the second part of my question, if I may, through you, Chair, is there the cost and exercise to do that at some stage in the future? And it may be a wee way off in the future. Can it be brought into this document in any way, subject to a review of that? Because I'm just wondering if it, it could be some time off that somebody may want to do that, but on all these underlying things, if we're using the productive land as to say that it's unsuitable, if that was to change overnight, would it make it suitable? And if it does, how do we incorporate that without doing a hell of a lot more work on our spatial plan?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Your worship.
Yeah, if the submitter had suggested that it was suitable for urban housing, residential, not lifestyle, it actually ironically would have changed the outlook, because that would have been possible. Although I would have been more concerned around they're starting to get a long way out of town in terms of infrastructural supply.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too.
But we're caught with this government legislation because of lifestyle, not because of residential. So, however, I'm happy with what we know now. I'm happy to support the stance of the spatial plans.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Dallieri.
I'm just interested, do you know what Horizon's timeline is around their mapping?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, there are statutory timeframes, which I can double check for you. But Horizons have already started that work. I won't try and give you what I feel like I can remember as the timeframe. I'll confirm that before coming back to you. And I guess in response to Councillor Whitson's comment, is we have done the criteria assessment for all of these rural lifestyle areas as well. So we have done a lot of that background work should the highly productive land situation change.
I think, just sorry, I find this really frustrating in our district in terms of whenever I travel to any of our neighbouring districts, that is where their growth has been. And we just tend to have been a follower in this space. Demand hasn't been as it has been in our neighbours. And this was our time to shine, and we've had to close the shop. And I really hope something enables us to make the most of this opportunity. I think particularly between Martin and Bulls.
Your Worship, did you have a...
Yeah, I think there have been specific instances where people have actually built homes and haven't yet followed through with subdivision, and as a consequence have now been caught with this change in government's position. And I'm not quite sure how we deal with that. No, and but that's more of a consenting issue for staff to consider rather than a spatial plan issue in terms of zoning. So, but there is a trap here because a number of people, I suspect, have been caught in this space.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, and then...
Well, I'm just reading this and I'm wondering, so what I was hearing from Councillor Wilson was that, is there a way of making this document more flexible? Is it, I don't know whether that's what you were saying, but I wonder if we should be flagging where we would be open to such development should the rules change. I don't know whether that's the sort of thing we put in this document to make it more flexible, but specifically around this district, because we are doing our district plan review shortly, whether we, I don't actually know enough about this particular piece or other suggestions of lifestyle blocks being put onto class 2, 3 and 3 soils.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Loudon, you had a comment?
We are fortunate to have class 2 and 3 lands around us. Because I think there's only 13% of those lands in the country. And we've got a lot around Fielding as well. And they certainly have done subdivisions on that land, but it is highly productive land. And, traditionally, Rangitikei has been a food source. And we should bear that in mind when we're considering spatial plan changing on that land.
Has anyone else got anything they'd like to comment on to do with this? And I'm going to come back to you, Katrina, to see whether or not you've got anything to add.
I do, thank you, Madam Chair. So the date for that mapping, September 2025. That Horizons have to have notified their plan change with that map, so they've got 3 years to do that. What I would say in terms of that flexibility, we have tried to write in disclaimers through this, because what will happen through the district plan change process is that we will get more detailed understanding of these land parcels, and that might actually change the assessments that are in there for those areas that we're progressing for rezoning. So, for example, residential areas that might have high suitability, we might get more detailed once we do that, start doing that technical detailed assessment that raises a substantial issue that changes that ranking for us. We are in a situation where we currently do have to comply with the NPS HBL, but likewise, should it change, we will look to be agile in that, and how agile we could be would depend on where we are in that phase 1 of our urban growth plan change.
Thank you.
I just a comment going back to Mara 2, Mara 7, and Mara 15. Those the owners of that land were looking to put in a private plan change. Is that still going ahead to plan change? How does that fit with our spatial plan processes? I'm not sure.
Well, approving, it's difficult for me to comment on individual cases without crossing boundaries. But if somebody's put an application for a private plan change or was lodging, it would probably help in essence.
Does that come through full council in the process, or was that a sort of a being new to this process? Does that come through the full council table, or is that just a relationship between the CE, for example, and council staff and the development?
Sorry, you're looking at me, maybe Peter wants to answer.
Yeah, so if there's a private plan change, our planning team will consider that the same way it would consider any other request. Katrina would know more about the particularities of the involvement of council. I might ask her to comment.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to comment. So yes, private plan changes would come through the council table, generally submitted. Someone that's doing a private plan change requests council to either adopt it as its own, accept it as a private plan change, or we also have the opportunity to reject it. We would bring that to full council as a recommendation with officer commentary next to it. And then it would go through the process as under the RMA.
The fact that we may have identified it as being suitable would probably help their processes.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The fact that they're proposing a private plan change hasn't influenced the assessment in the spatial plan. We've just done that on our own. And as we progress through the urban growth plan change, we're currently progressing in terms of looking at those areas on our own. Obviously wanting to work collaboratively with anyone that is wanting to progress a private plan change, but this document has been done independently of that.
Thank you. Any other questions around this? Otherwise we'll move on. No?
Yeah, and so the same conversation that we've had also applies to the officer commentary that's there for MAR 11 and MAR 12. I will pause further and give you more detail on MAR 13. We had quite a number of submitters supporting the rezoning of that area for rural lifestyle. And I have provided, so from page 77, a bit more commentary that I'll reference you to. That area is kind of to the south of Hawkeston Road in the Crofton type area, currently being assessed as moderate suitability for rural lifestyle development. It does have some benefits to that area. The biggest limitations of that area are natural hazards, so flooding, highly productive land and walkability. What I've done as a result of those submissions that were received is I've gone back to the areas that it didn't rank so well and re-looked at them and reassessed them. And as a result of that, I haven't recommended any changes to that area.
To you, Madam Chair, in response to Councillor Duncan, so if you go to 10.1134, where it's saying effectively should it be amended, the policy statement be amended, so it probably is covered there.
Thank you.
So whether that comment could be transferred back and what's the other one would be your call.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a conflict of interest here.
Have you?
Well, I own land in MAR 13, but yeah. I'm not the blue outlined area.
It's good to know.
Okay, I'll keep moving if there are no
Thank you.
questions. So next we jump down to the miscellaneous section, which again I'll take as read. The one recommendation that I have proposed is a change to key theme 1. So the submitter pointed out that there's no mention of arts throughout the document, which they're right about, there isn't. I did see benefit in particularly focusing on public spaces, so I have recommended a priority as added to key theme 1 for Martin, which is town centre revitalisation, around celebrating local art and public spaces, and then action with the recommendation is the underlying text about increasing community connection and public art.
Any feedback? Councillor Duncan?
Oh, I just want to say, to me, this also links into what we were discussing earlier with making this the storytelling. So I was really pleased to see this. And I really like the idea of linger opportunities. I haven't seen them before. Very nice, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Great, and then I'll pause briefly to see, double check there's no outstanding comments for the Martin section before we move on.
No, I've covered mine.
Councillor Duncan, sorry.
Sorry, I just wonder, the town clock, I didn't know about the town clock. That was fascinating to me, and wonder if that shouldn't be flagged as a let's not let this fall through the cracks.
Maybe we discussion. Okay. Moving on.
Okay, Mataroa. So the first recommendation there is around a comment raised by one of the submitters. So we received 2 submissions from Mataroa around the trend of younger generations returning to the area, which I consider was useful kind of context and commentary for that theme.
So this recommendation is just the addition of your younger generation. Okay. So moving for the recommendation, please. Comment.
Just a comment, I feel, that, yeah, that's probably relevant, not just to Mataroa. In terms of most of our areas would be wanting to encourage our younger generations to come back and live there. I don't know how we capture that though. The fact that, yeah, a bright submitter from Mataroa identified it.
Substitute matter
but-
for Rangatahi.
But, yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, you can't just do that in that
Right.
recommendation.
Councillor,
I think the point is here that there are younger generation, I mean, we do want them to, but they are actually coming back to Mataroa. So that's why this is put in there. They're experiencing this and would like it noted, I suppose, because it will help our thinking around accommodating young families coming back.
Councillor Wilson, did you?
I was just going to say, we've got a council mission statement that says make this place home. It's one of our documents, it's one of our statements. I think that possibly encompasses it, and maybe it's something that we should be celebrating, using more often.
Just some advice from Katrina here. So we've had an issue in Mataroa in terms of 2 or 3 blocks that are small blocks that are available for subdivision, but they're not. You're aware, Katrina, you're aware of the particular circumstances there. But I'm just wondering if there's any possible recommendation you could give us within the spatial plan to be more permissive in that space. I'd have to go back into my files to understand it, but we had, I know that there was a member that wanted to sell sections at Mataroa and was unable to do so effectively.
As is, whereas they wanted to sell them.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention a name because it's inappropriate in a public arena, but there was a degree of frustration that people wanted land there. They were small parcels, and we just couldn't make the system work. Could there be any changes in the system to allow it?
Can I provide comment on that through you, Madam Chair? We do have Action 1.1 already in the draft plan, which is review the zoning of Mataroa Village to recognise the area as a small village. One thing I would note though is that often one of the biggest restrictions is servicing, in particular wastewater servicing. So the village has no reticulated wastewater.
Yeah. I think I'll stop there because I can dig myself a hole here.
Did you have a comment?
I think His Worship has addressed it in his final comment.
Anything else? Otherwise we can move forward with the recommendation. And a mover, please. Thank you. Councillor Duncan. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Moore. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, great. Now moving on to key theme 1, I had no changes recommended to key theme 1, retain the village feel. Key theme 2, community facilities and connection. Now we got a very clear message at the community meeting that we went to up at Mataroa around the importance of the cemetery to the community. So the next recommendation is focused on recognising that in the current draft there's no mention of the cemetery. So that's where that next recommendation 32 is focused on.
Any commentary or kōrero from this? Otherwise we can go straight into a mover.
So are there other cemeteries throughout the district identified?
through you, Madam Chair, no, we haven't had a focus on cemeteries through this document. The rationale for including it for the settlement is because of how important it was when they shared that with us at that community meeting, to recognise that in terms of the community plan side of the spatial plan. It is a community managed cemetery rather than council managed cemetery.
Does the council offer any assistance into the management of it?
Not with Mataroa.
None at all. It's entirely funded and run by. Well, we better support it then, yeah.
So we've, any other,
Well, I just take Councillor Dalgiddy's point. I think all cemeteries should be noted on the spatial plan because they are important historical sites for the community.
thank you for that input. I would like to get some clarity about when we talk about all cemetery. When you say all cemetery, I would say that every marae that's around here has got a cemetery that are not supported by councils. So we need to be very clear, and I would like to say that a number of years ago, when that kaupapa had come up, and I'd asked specifically about a cemetery at one of the marae, was told that they at that time, council supports specific cemeteries, so. Thank you, councillor.
Trina's just said that there's a recommendation here that the Mataroa Cemetery should be recognised. I think council should consider in the spatial plan recognising all cemeteries.
Thank you, Your Worship.
We probably have 100. And we support probably 7 or 8 that we maintain. We have had a history of giving a grant to a couple of other minor cemeteries to help. But literally it's a case of where do you stop here? There's a huge number.
It's not so much supporting them. It's not what I'm getting at. I think it's important to list them. If someone, for example, came from outside the area that had some family history in the area, the spatial plan might give them some point of contact as to where these cemeteries are.
Yeah. A number of them are located on private land. That's one of the other issues. There's a number are Urupas that they literally protect. It's a really sensitive area.
Councillor Dalgiddy.
So, a question to you, would there be any value in identifying the ones council is supporting?
Through you, Madam Chair, probably the difficulty we have at this stage of the process is I think it could become quite a significant change, and without a submission driving it, it could be difficult to incorporate that through. Whether or not there's something more minor that we could draft into, say, another section to reflect the sentiments, that doesn't create such a substantial change, given the point of the process we're at. One thing to note with this one is that all of the descriptive text and priority and action are all focused on really recognising that cemetery is community managed. So it's effectively the ongoing management of the cemetery by the community is important. community management of the cemetery, and action support continued community management of the Mataroa Cemetery.
Councillor Duncan.
Having been at that meeting and heard all of the follow-up and seeing the submissions, I'm very happy to move that
Thank you.
and see it as a special case.
Seconder, please. Councillor Moore. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And I guess from me, through you, Madam Chair, it'll be useful for me to have direction around where the committee would like to go with that wider cemetery discussion.
Your worship.
I think I'm hesitant because the enormous number that we have as to how much you put into this document. For instance, one of the biggest cemeteries we have is just outside Martin that is not supported in any shape or form, and that's not the old cemetery at Mount View, it's another cemetery just outside Martin, and there are lots of them. I think that if you start to decide you're going to identify them all, it's difficult.
Anyone got any other thoughts for Carol or I've got a comment? So my comment would be, we're dealing with what's in front of us at the moment, and so that's Mustable Cemetery. Potentially, there could be an opportunity around a council table or something where a discussion can be had and it can be talked about, threshed out with everybody. And so just having some understanding, it's understanding of what our council is actually supporting. That might be a start of things, and what and the method to the madness of why a specific cemetery is in and why it's or in or out. Perhaps that's not a today discussion, but maybe that could be something we could bring up at another time.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I think on reflection, I take on point Councillor Loudon's comments. There's probably a threshold here as to what is a public cemetery. For instance, a number of our other cemeteries, including the one I've spoken to, peculiar is the wrong word, but I'll use it, peculiar to a particular religion. So, for instance, if you're a Methodist, you could be interred in that cemetery. So that would cut the numbers down. So a huge number of the cemeteries that are on private land are not public cemeteries, and that you couldn't apply to be buried there. Or there'd be a process that would say that was inappropriate. So there's probably quite a smaller number of public cemeteries.
Can I just suggest that basically what's been put forward that I can hear is there's a registry of cemeteries, and perhaps we could look around our neighbours to see if such things exist and how they might have done it, but otherwise I can either see that brought forward.
Thank you. Staff, is any staff got any input to this? Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick look on our GIS system. We have a specific cemeteries map that shows all of the cemeteries that we manage and look after, and it gives you plot numbers and a whole lot of detail of the ones that we manage. There are only 8 of them. And it shows you where they are in the district, so I think it's a good start for the bits that we hold the information on.
There's a registry kept for other cemeteries, but they're not cemeteries we manage.
But it's still difficult for us to put it on the stage, even those ones. So.
Thank you. Katrina, anything else about regarding this recommendation?
No, we can move on to keeping 3, really?
83. So
Keeping 3, page 82.
So just to remind people, we will be stopping at 3 o'clock for a 15-minute break.
Yeah.
Yes. So potentially, Madam Chair, this is the last one to finish us off with Mataroa.
Thank you.
So it's a recommendation around adding in more detail around the potential for active mobility pathways for Mataroa. Submitter 100 talked about active mobility pathways being important, which I subsequently realised I hadn't done a very good job at including for this community. So those recommendations are as a result of that.
Feedback, Chance?
Based on Katrina's almost admission there, I'll support.
Support the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to say that instead of waiting until 3 o'clock, I would like us to stop now.
Yeah.
And then we can start afresh and be back around the table at 3:15. Is that okay?
Excellent.
Kia ora and welcome back everybody to, we're going to carry on to this next part of our policy and planning group because we've still got quite a lot of recommendations to get through. So thank you, let's move along please.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. We're up to Moa Whango. There's one recommendation there around amending the action to recognise the Ngā Whanaro o Rangitiki. Again, a mission from officers. They definitely should have been included, and there's an error on our end.
Yes, I have a comment here. It says collective lower Mowhongo Mokai subgroup, and I believe that's the upper Mowhongo Mokai subgroup, not lower.
Through you, Madam Chair, if that's the case, I trust your knowledge and suggest that you make that amendment when you move that recommendation.
Okay.
I did have one.
I'm pretty certain. I'm 98% certain. So in that case, yes, I will make that amendment, please, that be the Rangatike Rivers Catchment Collective Upper Mowhongo Mokai subgroup. Upper Mowhongo Mokai, Upper Mowhongo River. I don't know that it should be Mokai even, should it?
An alternative through you, Madam Chair, could be to not reference the exact group. Would just be to reference the Rangatike Rivers Catchment Collective subgroup.
Yes,
Yeah, because, yeah,
excellent idea.
I'll double, I'll second that.
I'll clear it.
Okay, so we're going to make the amendment to that.
Yeah, so because it's not been moved, Councillor Duncan.
I'm happy to move amendment, yes.
Thank you, and Councillor Lambert, you were happy to see.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, all those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Moving along.
Now we move on to Ohanaiti. We're starting on page 86. There are a couple of recommendations in this section. First one, key theme 1, recreation and community facilities. There were comments raised around the safety and a request for a right turning bay into Otarirau Road. So the recommendations focused around commentary and an action being included for those matters. I will reference the Mayor's comments earlier about whether or not some of these are truly land use issues. I would firmly put this in the category of a community plan issue included for those reasons. And I would comment that traffic related matters have been included throughout the document for many settlements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll say no more.
This is going to put into the form.
It's up to the councillors. My recommendation would be to have it as part of the spatial plan.
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And probably recommendation 35 and 36 probably are effectively the same thing. I could have included them in the same
I'll
recommendation.
move again.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Morn. Seconded,
Second.
please. Councillor Wilson again. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right, moving on to key thing 2, housing. You will note from the submissions that there were quite a few comments for Ohanaiti around antisocial behaviour. There are no officer recommendations here because the advice is that antisocial behaviour should be reported as like a request for service to council so that the appropriate officers can investigate and take action where appropriate. So in saying that, I'll move on to key theme 3, business. 3 submitters identified town beautification as important. So I've recommended that a priority in action is included to reflect those submitter comments.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Well done.
And then finally, just recognise that the Otara Bridge comments are a bit of a hangover from the annual plan crossover, and comments have been focused around us putting communications on our website, and that largely being addressed through the annual plan. Great. Are there any further comments on Ohanaiti before we move to Uhutu?
Just that we'd like to.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely little town.
Okay, great. We received no submissions on Ohutu and there are no associated recommendations. So we'll move on to Rata.
How many people would know where Ohutu is as councillors? Perhaps it might be good to actually.
Oh, you all know what it is, yeah.
Perhaps it would be good for us to get on a bus and.
And just, can I digress just a second? Occasionally in the past, I have actually put a fun quiz out at a round table before a council started, with questions like, these are a number of areas. Which ones of these are in our council road? What's our approximately our average budget figure? How many ratepayers do we have, etc.? Is it worth doing that as and there's no blame associated with this, but is it worth doing again? Well, I'll do it as a fun one.
Not prizes though.
Great, through to the chair, we'll move on to Rata. In terms of key theme 1 Papakainga, no changes are recommended to that section. Key theme 2 environmental restoration, again needing to incorporate words around the importance of Ngā Puna Rao or Rangitike and the work that they're doing. So recommendation 39 is reflective of that.
Move it, please. Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah,
Seconded by Mr. Shenton. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Carried.
Can I comment? It's really good to see that it's going right through the whole document, because in actual fact it's going through a large part of the district. So that's fantastic. It's a great initiative.
And through you, Madam Chair, notices that I've missed anyone there. I did make an effort to read the full document and try and make sure I incorporated it everywhere I needed to. So please do advise me if I've missed it. Okay, now we move on to Ratana Pa. Key theme 1, Papakainga. At the community meeting, it was noted that the homes down Rangatahi Road were missing from the summary document as being identified for Papakainga. So I do think it could be useful to add an additional, our little P icon to that development down there to recognise its importance.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, can I have a mover for recommendation 39, please?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. Mr. Shenton, seconded by. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I saw your hand up. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, and then moving on to key theme 2, community facilities. At the community meeting, we were advised that the second road has already been investigated in the community. That's not an action that the community wants. So the officer recommendation is to remove it.
Happy to move.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Maughan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And then there are no officer recommendations on key theme 3.
Thank you.
Next we move to our rural Rangitike section. The first recommendation again is around reordering the themes based on prioritisation.
Thank you. Can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Seconded, please. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, now key theme 1, there's quite a few comments. A lot of them came from Submitter 107 Horticulture New Zealand. I'll take all of the summaries and the officer comment as read because there's quite a bit under there. I haven't proposed any changes to key theme 1 as a result of those comments. Then moving on to key theme 2, environmental enhancement. Again, I haven't proposed any changes to key theme 2 as a result of the submitters' comments. Again, a lot of these are often where what's being requested or commented on as important is already incorporated into the draft document.
Any feedback?
With reference to recommendation 42.
Yep, we'll keep moving then. So again, in terms of key theme 2, no officer recommendations. Key theme 3, destination opportunities. I haven't recommended any changes. Same for key theme 4 and key theme 5. So in the miscellaneous section, there was a comment suggesting we replace the term versatile soils with highly productive land to better match the NPS HPL. So I've recommended that. That's a good idea.
That was the comment. Does that not lock us into something? Mind you, this is only a spatial plan, I guess, but when we had the earlier comment about highly productive lands and what may be deemed to be a highly productive land or a highly productive soil versus versatile soils is perhaps somewhat misleading and could potentially be misleading if you're saying that a versatile soil is a highly productive land, and that when we have constraints about what can be done on highly productive land, which may lead us to class 1, class 2 soils. There should be some clarification on that, and if there's no risk to that happening, then I've got no issue. Just flagging it, that's all.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'm not particularly worried. Either way, I think highly productive land better aligns, but likewise, I'm not concerned if it remains as versatile soils.
Councillor Elder.
Highly productive land is a scale, so it's not just the top scale, it's the scale of whatever it is. Versatile land suggests that it's just versatile land, so it can do either things. But I think highly productive land is the appropriate term to use.
Yeah, versatile land was a specific use when I did soil sciences, but people, highly productive land is actually a better description. I agree. But it's
Thank you.
Versatile soils and slopes.
Yeah, it's
Quite
just
heavy. Yeah, not highly productive.
Have you got any answers to Ashley's? Okay, thank you. I'd like a mover for this recommendation, please.
whichever one it is.
Okay, we'll go with his worship moving. Seconded by Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. That was 42.
Okay, great. That takes us to the end of our rural Tainui TK section. So I'll pause briefly just in case I've missed anyone. Otherwise, we're up to page 98, Scott's Ferry. Great. So Scott's Ferry, one of the things to think about, and I will try and remember to ask again at the end of the section, is there was a request from a submitter to go back out to this community. Now, after analysing these submissions, I came to the perspective that I didn't think it would be necessary with where all the recommendations he got to, but do seek your guidance on that matter once we get to the end of the section.
Thank you.
So the first area is around the vision. There are a few comments around the vision, and I have recommended a change as a result of that.
Happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded please. Councillor Moore, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Great. Now, key thing 1, currently labelled recreation development. A number of the comments we received from this community were around concern about recreation. So I've amended to rename the title, and you might want to reconsider this after we work through the rest of it, is lifestyle and environment. And that's a result of the analysis below around all of the actions.
Any feedback? Right, happy to go with your recommendations.
Yeah.
So that would be recommendation 44.
Yes, recommendation 44.
A mover for recommendation 44, please.
I will.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert, seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And then your next recommendation is around removing a sentence, which is around recreation and visitor amenities.
Maybe to move.
Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And then the final one is all aligned. It's about removing and replacing a priority. So focusing on retaining the small village feel and removing the priorities that focus on visitor destination.
Anything else? Okay, so mover for that recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Shenton, seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, the next topic is campground extension. We received some opposition to this action, so the recommendation is that that action is removed.
Can I just ask a question?
Councillor.
Is this obviously feedback from the community that they don't want, doesn't sound like they want a bigger campground, they just want to retain what they've got essentially.
They have confused an extension of campground with upgrading of facilities essentially, I think.
Through you, Madam Chair, so we've got 10 written submissions, and of those 10 written submissions, 4 requested that that action was removed specifically. Yeah, so that's where that recommendations come from. In terms of the wider community meeting, the feedback that I took away from that was in opposition to being promoted as a destination.
But it doesn't snooker somebody in the future if they wanted to extend the camping ground or whatever, they could, still got to come back through another process, eh?
Yeah, I mean, through you, Madam Chair, these type of things are really the community plan side of the spatial plan. So a lot of these, if someone wanted to progress them later down the track, would come through council's other avenues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving for this, please.
You got the choice.
Councillor Moore. Seconded, please. Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Recommendation.
Then we come back to, again, another action recommended for removal, increasing signage for the ferry. This one is, if it comes out in the future, is really one that could be progressed outside of the spatial plan. So having mixed comments, it's not really necessary to put it in there. So I've recommended its removal.
Thank you. Mover. Thank you. Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Mr. Shenton. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you.
And then we move on to car park extensions. So we've got, I think, 5 submitters requested this action was removed. So I've recommended that it's removed.
Mover. Councillor Wilson. Seconded. Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And then in terms of the rest of the comments,
Just one moment, please.
I'll take them as read and ask the questions.
Sorry, just one minute.
So, just at the beginning of the process, it talked about the importance of fire and emergency access to places and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering, could you just tell me how that has been reflected on with, you know, things like car parks and things not being extended? Obviously, the capacity is there now. I mean, is this the time to think about that sort of thing throughout the district? You know, access of appliances and helicopters, whatever, you know, for emergency response. Is that the sort of thing that has come through?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a specific comment submission from Fire and Emergency down further. A lot of those things, I would say, not part of this process, would be best considered part of this process. In terms of the extension of the car park down in Scott's Ferry, no, I didn't consider that factor in recommending its removal.
Any other feedback regarding Councillor Duncan's comment?
Only that the reference to his car park at Scott's Ferry would be a very liberal and broad term.
Okay, great. So now I come back to the committee for direction around further engagement with Scott's Ferry, having gone through their comments and the responses. What you would see is the best approach for that community, whether or not to go back out there and have a further session with them.
Feedback, please.
Has that been requested that we go back out there and, sorry, I've missed that. But further question. So just by one submitter, or are there several submitters from Scott's Ferry have requested that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd have to double check. There's one specific that comes to mind, but I would need to double check that to provide you with accurate data.
Other feedback around this issue, please?
Just to say that I wouldn't see it as being certainly a full council action. That there has been quite a bit of communication between the people of Scott's Ferry's Worship, the Mayor, myself, Councillor Calkin have all had meetings down there, and I think between those councillors and the Mayor, we could certainly facilitate a catch-up with them, and it's a very cordial catch-up at some stage, so happy to do that. I wouldn't see it as being a specific full council action.
Anyone else got any input?
Yeah, I'd agree. Can see, very Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, have you got any input into this?
No, I think the Deputy Mayor's dead right. I think this is a community action plan rather than a community spatial plan issue.
Is there a direction from there? Thank you.
Definitely. Okay, now we move on to Taihape. We received a really good number of submissions from this community, so we received 47 submissions, which is great. Your first recommendation is around reordering the themes.
Thank you. I move it for the recommendation 50. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Now, key theme 1 for Taihape is suitable housing for all. So following the trend as per our other communities, there's a lot of commentary and officer response sitting in this section. The first recommendation I have is around adding some commentary and a priority around elderly housing. So this was a really strong theme for this community. And I didn't feel when I looked back at the document that it specifically referenced that. So my recommendation is to add more specific commentary around that.
Councillor Duncan.
I just would like to comment that perhaps it's not been clear through this, well, it has been mentioned, but it's the topography of the town that makes it so difficult for elderly people to stay there, with a lot of them living on the hill. So it's sort of almost, I wonder if it's somehow the comment should include flat land development. I'm not sure how that would work, but because there's plenty of elderly people there. We have a very good health system which is looking to be even better shortly, so it's really, a lot of it's around topography.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan. Councillor Wilson.
Could I make a comment that if it could be incorporated within the statement in the plan, is that council has spent some time investigating some options up there and has some recommendations, and it is a space that council is being actively working in. And I think it should be reflected within the comment.
Your Worship, have you got any comment into this? Anyone else?
Chair, with your permission, I can suggest some additional wording before you go to move a recommendation. If you give me 30 seconds to work with these here.
Nice to see you. It's good.
Yeah.
Elderly on flat land and something in that. It goes right as a usage.
We had a careers sort of day down at work today. This was shocker.
With the community on this challenge.
I don't know how many secondary school kids came along.
Thank you, Katrina.
Okay, so if elected members would look at, based on your comments, so what we've got is the lack of housing for elderly on flat land means residents are unable to stay in the community near to their family and friends as they age. Council has actively been working with the community on this challenge.
I'm fine with this stuff. I mean, essentially you're adding a commentary, that's all.
Happy to move.
Moved by councillor Duncan, seconded please. Thank you, councillor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, great. And then as we keep working through, I'll take all of the summary and officer comment as read. Unless there's any questions on that, we'll move to key theme 2, enhance Taihape as a destination. Okay, well, I'll take all of that section as read. Again, a lot of this stuff is already in the draft plan, which is why there's no officer recommendations. And it's similar for key theme 3, manage competing land uses and support local business growth. I'll take the summaries and officer comment as read. The one area that I probably will point out is there is a similar concern about being identified in a potential industrial growth area. And I haven't provided any recommendations around that because we would, before doing anything in terms of rezoning, we would need further robust assessment of that area. The need for industrial land, possible uses and alternatives, and that would include any further consultation with the landowners in that area.
Thank you.
The other area of specific comment is sale yards, so mixed comments from submitters between commercial and residential. They are currently zoned residential, and I've noticed that we've identified its potential for commercial, but would look to work with the landowners around future development and zoning of that site.
Thank you.
Moving to key theme 4, recreation and community facilities, again split into different topics in there with officer comments that I'll take as read. I haven't made any changes to that theme.
Thank you.
In key theme 5, enhance and protect Taihape's heritage. I'll take the comments as read, but again, this is one where I haven't adequately referenced the importance of Ngā Punarau or Rangitike, so there's a recommendation to that effect.
Through you, Madam Chairman, at a risk of getting some negative comments around what I'm going to say here, essentially when you go to Taihape, the population has dropped quite considerably, since the 60s, and we highlight that. So presumably, part of the issue is either the huge families with huge number of kids has dropped, and the population per head, per house has dropped, or you have a whole lot of vacant housing. And maybe we should be concentrating on more replacement of housing stock rather than stock. The figures are quite startling when you look at them. Are we focusing in the wrong direction here? So it's a third lower than it was back in the 1960s at 1,800 people.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Duncan.
Well, I have two things, that, but on His Worship's subject, also a lot of housing stock was taken away when the railways left town, so we have actually lost stock as well during that time. Do you want to have further comment on that? Sorry, before I go on to a different subject.
Yeah, we did have about 20 houses removed along along Mataroa Road. I'm not aware of, maybe were there a whole lot removed by the, down by the sale yards?
And there was another block just north of town that there were had
Okay,
17
fair
old
point.
houses up there, and 3 cottages have just recently gone off Wicker Street
Just one moment, please. Can I just ask what part are we on to? Have we gone back to, sorry, I'm getting,
Yeah, I
which
believe
part are we
Lee's
going
gone
back
back to
into?
key theme one.
I'm just reflecting on how they say I shouldn't have.
Okay,
Page like 106.
sorry, I'm just trying to get.
And through you, Madam Chair, for Taihape is another of our really challenging areas for future housing growth. Some of the priorities identified in there is around infill and medium density. And the reason why we have key theme 3, which is all around land, let me read it properly, managing competing land uses, is because of the value of that flat land and the competition between commercial and residential activities. So certainly Greenfield is in there as part of the picture, but there will be a real key focus on infill and intensification to provide for future housing needs.
Thank you. Anyone, Councillor Duncan?
Just going on to page 113, I don't want to rush anybody, we're happy to move on to 113. And with advice from you, Madam Chair, of Officer Comment 19.76, I believe that Ngāti Tamakōpere should be listed in there
Needs to be added.
as the 4, as one of the 4.
Hold on. Thank you. Just waiting for us to get to it.
Sorry.
And my apologies for its omission.
Thank you. Given that it is Taihape Ngāti Tamakōpere does have mana whenua in the township. So recommendation 52. 52.
Yep.
Which is pretty much just following on that theme of Ngā Punarau getting put through the whole document.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Maughan, seconded please. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried.
And then moving on, key theme 6, transport. I haven't provided any officer recommendations on that section. And then as we move on to the miscellaneous section, Ngāti Tamakōpere put a submission in, and subsequently I've met with them to discuss that submission and understand it fully. So as a result of that meeting, I've recommended a number of amendments to recognise their interest in Taihape. I've recommended additional text, a change of the cover photo, additional text yet to be confirmed around Tamakōpere priorities, and a further circle around those little circles, what's important to protect, and another image change.
Any feedback?
Happy to move, but also happy to encourage officers and staff to continue that conversation with that body in Taihape.
Thank you. Seconded please. Councillor Maughan, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, and then I'll pause briefly to double check there's nothing left in Taihape.
It's a little harsh.
Not like that.
Might actually word that.
It's all come
What
down.
about standing matters from the Taihape section?
Can I just ask, okay, whether, you know, with that last recommendation where it says that Ngāti Tamakōpere, that Taihape is their home, will that be received by the other iwi to say where?
No, because the other iwi acknowledge that they have mana whenua over that area.
Just wanted
Yeah.
to check that was fine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right, let's move on to Titakina. We received 2 submissions. So the first section is vision. One submitter suggested the word rural is added to the vision. So I've recommended that it's added. It seems to reflect them as a community.
Yep. Any feedback from that? No. Mover, please.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you. Moved by councillor Wilson, seconded by councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye. Carried.
Right, and then I'll take the rest of the themes and the miscellaneous as read. I haven't recommended any further changes to the Tuakini section.
Councillor Kilda.
Right, okay, we'll keep moving on to Uruku. So in terms of key theme 1, Papakainga, I haven't recommended any amendments here. Then in terms of key theme 2, transport network, this is where I do have a recommendation. I'm running slightly behind. So the recommendation is that Action 2.1's amended to better reflect our role, which is as an advocate on the state highway, and to better clarify what we're advocating about. Traffic is, from the submissions we've received, is the top priority for the people that live in Uruku.
This is another one that I think we should note as an action that we can pursue elsewhere.
So thank you.
I'm okay with it being there, but there's a danger that it just gets lost.
Just remind me though, didn't we at O-Ignite put in the turning bay at Otara Road?
No, they're advocating for a bigger one currently.
Yeah, so I guess through you, Madam Chair, what Councillor Vaughan's suggesting is that Council agreed to put in that action for Oanaiti around the advocacy role.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, whereas
the
it's
same
similar.
students here.
Yeah, and I guess the comment I would make is following adoption, I will be preparing an implementation plan so this doesn't all get lost effectively.
I'm happy to move.
Just one moment. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, if we're trying to keep the theme the same
Consistent,
through,
yeah. Being consistent.
chopping and changing a bit as we go.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Councillor Duncan has moved, seconded by councillor Moore. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Hold up.
Right, in terms of keeping 3 and 4, I'll take them as read. I haven't proposed any changes to them. And then the final recommendation is around the Macron. I have received advice that we should not be including the Macron for Uruku.
Happy to,
Moved by Councillor Bishop, seconded by councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
I believe it's wasn't that one, to be honest. Sorry.
Great, moving on to Wangaihu. We received no submissions, but there was something in reviewing that section that I thought really did need to be changed in terms of our role and showing that in terms of traffic, it's a wakakotahi function that we advocate on behalf of our community.
Thank you. Moved by councillor Wilson. Seconded, please. Seconded by Shenton. All those in favour say aye.
Okay, now we move into the district-wide section, which is structured slightly differently given the submissions we received. I've structured them by submitted this time, just purely because it was easier to do that way. The first submitter is Arapatama, our Department of Corrections. I'll largely take the commentary and officer comment as read. There is one change they recommended in terms of adding a sentence to our connected communities key theme. So these are the themes that sit at the front of the document that I thought felt actually wider than the context they're coming from and felt reasonable for our community. So I've recommended it's added.
Can I just ask the question here, by putting it in the terms that we have, in their mind, this opens a door, isn't it? In terms of non-custodial premises. It's just phrased more politically correctly, if you like, or this is to say that it gives them an argument to say they want more centres around the country. And that's probably a fair comment, but it's just the use of language that amuses me a little bit.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, I think they were pretty clear in their submission what their angle is in terms of providing for future facilities. We've got specific commentary later around residential activities and then the non-residential stuff as well. So yeah, over to you whether or not this is something you'd like to have into the document.
Feedback, please.
Bishop.
I'm okay with it, but that's the argument that we used. You know, for the strength in their arguments, one of the issues that we've had is how they have gone about putting centres in our town. You know, with very little consultation to say we're going to get somebody else to buy a house and put 7 or 8 young sexual offenders in it. It's a poor process. And I know I'm being recorded, so.
Feedback from other councillors.
And we need these sorts of facilities, but I'm not saying we shouldn't have them in the Rangatahi, but it's just the way it's framed.
I have a question. So I have very little experience in this area, but my question would be, if we are more permissive by actually opening ourselves up to it, does it mean they would be more transparent? In fact, rather than, as you say, perhaps it being not very transparent and people finding that their communities.
Oh, I think that would be a conversation with
them.
corrections that should happen.
Katrina?
We have kind of jumped ahead through you, Madam Chair, to recommendation 59, but I can provide some comment on the residential activities because there is also a recommendation to include a sentence. One of the things I would note is important for council to consider, particularly in the district plan space, is what are resource management matters versus what are Department of Correction matters. So in terms of residential activities, we need to look at the effects. It's the corrections that look at the suitability of people to be out in the community. So there again is a recommendation. I do think it's broader, but like the Mayor has said, the department would refer to this in terms of advocating for their interests.
What's crossing my mind, I'm just trying to get my head around this, but it may be, you know, people who are from this area, things like that, maybe, you know, being residential here might be of benefit, but, and the fact that they're saying we don't have any in the district, so. Well, it's interesting. An interesting situation.
Would these facilities need to have sort of a consent to be in place, or they can just use it like a normal residential unit?
I'm not the regulatory person. Johan would be the person to really ask. What I would suspect is that they would certainly use this as an argument to say, you know, we were totally transparent. We submitted to you saying this is the need, and we've suggested words around it, and you've adopted them. I'm not sure that we would have, you know, if you put 8 or 10 people in a house, they would have a right to be in the house. I can't see a reason under consenting you could deny, but if it was set up as a commercial unit, then that's different.
Councillor Duncan?
I wonder if we could put the word selective development of essential social services and infrastructure. To qualify it slightly so that we're not opening the door to us not being able to consider it appropriately.
The answer would be, what are the criteria for selection?
And I guess through
Sorry, my comment around this is that they're specifically talking about the let's get this right, enable the development of essential social services and infrastructure is coming from one angle of and the corrections, and I feel, because that's with another head on, that's an area that I work in, that there would need to be a lot more consultation and talk and.
There are actually rules such as schools and proximity, I believe. I'm not up with it, but,
I guess the history, perhaps I can answer Councillor Loudon more correctly. So what happened was we had a house that was purchased by a private individual or person with rentals, for example, in connection with corrections, with basically a guarantee to say we will put people into this house. And so there was meant to be quite a number, and there was no notification process through council at all for that to happen, so they would have had the legal right to be able to do it. I called a meeting of different agencies, including the police, including corrections, and saying you might have had the legal right to do so, but it was in an inappropriate place for it to happen, and I will fight it. And because it was on a pathway between, for instance, Ngātawa and town, and close to the college, then there are reasonable grounds for the community to be concerned. But they would have been able to do it.
Councillor Moore?
Oh, I just think that a range of essential social services covers more than somebody out of jail, or somebody that's trying to be integrated back into the community. It could be youth facilities. It could be new WINS building or something. I don't know. It's a pretty broad term, and I don't know if we're just getting hung up on one part of it. I think it's a bit broader than just what we're talking about.
I suppose we're getting hung up on it because it's actually what's in the, it's because it's been specifically highlighted in there. It's not in there, it's just that it's been, from them, it's specifically been highlighted as what they'll be looking at. I'm interested to see where we go next. Councillor Duncan?
can I just ask clarification? So without the sentence in our spatial plan, that house was purchased and the plans were made to so with it, we're actually,
You're reinforcing them. Reinforcing the submission. And, there are places that are needed in the country. On that instance, it was the wrong place. It was a location issue more than anything else.
Yes,
But
please.
I think you just need to be aware that that's the argument that would be used by corrections to say, we have told you, and this is our submission, and as a consequence of the submission, supported by that, you've adopted us. It's just part of the legal argument.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, just clarifying a couple of things. Recommendation 58 has resulted from their focus on non-custodial community correction sites. So that's like their offices or their trade depots. It's recommendation 59 that's come from the residential facilities discussion. In terms of establishment of these type of facilities, it's a district plan that has the rules. So it would be, I won't say whether or not these activities are permitted under the current district plan because we would have to do some analysis, but should we do a plan change, they will be looking at our plan change around the provisions that we've got in relation to these two different activities, and like the Mayor said, would direct into our spatial plan, but a reminder, our spatial plan is a non-statutory document. It doesn't change the rules around this type of stuff.
Chair, if I could, in an effort to move forward, I'd like to move the recommendation, and if I could just speak to it very briefly. I think we are getting a little bit hung up. This is a plan, not a policy. And I also think that we've had a very, very good words from our friend Mr. Senton over here. And, you know, I think there's some value in possibly having these things for some integration back into our community with those that have family in the area. So I actually am in supportive of this being in there, but just bearing in mind it's a plan, not a policy.
Thank you.
I'm also aware of what his wish that the mayor has raised as to when that matter happened.
Thank you. So that we've got a mover for recommendation 58.
I'm not happy to second it.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Now, recommendation 59, which specifically talks about a range of residential activities.
I'm also happy to move that as well.
Second, please. Thank you. Councillor Maughan, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.
Key word there, Chair, is variety of needs.
Great.
Excellent.
The next summit is Te Whatu Ora, Health New Zealand. I haven't actually recommended any amendments as a result of their submission. Most of their comments were already incorporated. The one that they suggested that's not is the topic of inclusionary zoning, which is effectively where you require people to provide affordable housing as part of their development. The commentary there from me has been, given our relatively affordable land prices and the lack of evidence throughout New Zealand in terms of its implementation, that it's not proposed or supported, but that we'd consider it during our district plan review. The next submitter is fire and emergency. Again, I haven't proposed any specific changes to our spatial plan as a result. The key action coming out of that really is to liaise with them as we go through our urban growth plan change to make sure their concerns around access is addressed, firefighting, water supply, those type of areas are addressed when we're doing our growth planning.
Thank you.
The next one's from the New Zealand Defence Force. So they commented around the importance of base or Hakia and requested it be given more prominence in the spatial plan. Cool.
I have a comment.
Comment.
I just see in 23.26 and just wondered whether that some of those words from there shouldn't be included in the recommendation, specifically to protect it against reverse sensitivity effects. I think reverse sensitivity effects are quite important. And I agree that it is an incredibly important facility, even though it's not on our beautiful soil. Just wonder if that, yes, so my question is, should the recommendation include the specific words, reverse sensitivity effects, protect against?
Through you, Madam Chair, my advice is the best place to do that and to have those discussions is through the relevant section of the district plan review. We currently have height thresholds in our district plan, but we have no noise sensitivity provisions for them, and I would suggest they have some that they probably would like us to put in.
I agree, absolutely. Seconding recommendation 60.
Sorry,
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Did you have a question?
just about lost it actually. My question was district plan, reverse sensitivity effects. You said something. It's gone, sorry.
Apologies. We have had a mover for this recommendation.
Oh, I know what the question was, sorry. It's back again. So when we are changing or looking at putting in things into the district plan such as that, do we consult with our community? Great, thank you.
Councillor Wilson has moved the recommendation.
Well, I don't, but
Oh,
He seconded it.
Oh, you said
See, it was all.
losing control. Bishop has moved, Councillor Wilson has seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Elder.
Right, the next submitter is the Te Araroa Trust. You've already dealt with a couple of recommendations for Bill.
Move it. Yeah, I'll second.
Moved by,
I'm quite happy to move this whole section as a block.
To recommendation 64.
alright. 61, 62, 63 and 64
As a block.
have been moved as a block by His Worship the Mayor and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, the next submitter is Waka Kotahi. So I have one recommendation is to add the yield of each growth area to the detail section. I thought that could be a useful inclusion.
Feedback, please.
Yield of each growth.
I missed this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can't remember reading it.
Let's see
Thank
here.
God I'm not alone there.
Perhaps I can add a bit more background information. So when I think of potential yield, it would be like likely number of houses that you could get out of that growth area. We currently, from memory, have the area, how big it is, the suitability rating. It would simply be a separate column saying potential yield based on rough yield calculation.
Yeah, I'm happy to move.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Mr Shenton. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
The next submit is Horizons Regional Council. I do have a recommendation for MAR 04 as a result of conversations with the area engineer who raised specific concerns around the natural hazard assessment for MAR 04. So I've recommended it's increased from yellow to red as a result.
Thank you. Any feedback around this, please?
Is that the one we were looking at earlier?
I'll just find it a minute.
I'll find it in a second. Page 105, MAR 04 is the area between Ngātawa Road and Calico Line.
Okay.
Were there any submitters on MAR 05 suggesting that it goes ahead?
For you, Madam Chair, in terms of MAR 05, no submitters on MAR 05, and I don't believe, I can double check, I don't believe we've received
Sorry,
any.
MAR 04 I mean, not MAR 05.
No, I'll go back and triple check, but I don't believe we received any submissions from MAR 04, although we do know that there is a landowner in that area that has an interest in development. And while I've recommended that criteria is amended, I haven't recommended amending the suitability assessment.
Could you say that again, sorry?
So I've recommended the criteria, so in our matrix table, the dot is amended, but I haven't recommended the suitability assessment has changed.
So that would still facilitate potentially that landowner that you'd said had indicated to you an interest.
Yeah, I mean, through you, Madam Chair, for Martin, we've got quite a few areas identified as high suitability, so we will need to narrow that down through our district plan change. We've got considerably more areas than land we need. Yeah.
You can move on that basis.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Wilson has moved. Councillor Lambert has seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Right, and then that's all the recommendations I had on the Horizons Regional Council submission. Now we're on a submission from Ngāti Tamakōpere. As mentioned earlier, I've met with them directly, and the recommendation is to include an additional section for Opaia and Kaiewe. I'm drafting that with them at the moment, so the recommendation is to include that section, but would note that you would get that for council.
Thank you. Moved by, please.
Comment?
Comment.
I'd like to say that at the recent Te Ropu Ahika meeting, the chair of Ngāti Tamakōpere did mention how grateful she was and what a great job you were doing, I believe, with that addition. So I just wanted to repeat that on, that's what I heard, which is great. It's lovely for me as a councillor to hear great things about our staff. Thank you.
Seconded, please.
Second.
Seconded by councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That was recommendation 67, moved by councillor Duncan, seconded by councillor Wilson.
Right, now we head on to the
Even though.
interested residents of Martin and the Blangy TK submission. The next two recommendations are around including additional maps. One to show the district's location in relation to the Central North Island, which I thought would be a useful addition, and one really highlighting our natural features, which I also thought would be a really useful addition. So whether or not you want to move those as a block.
With regard to the first one, happy to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seconded by councillor
I'm
Lambert.
going to second that, yeah.
Thank you. Speak the mayor, councillor.
Question from me with recommendation of the map showing the natural features. What sorts of natural features are envisaged?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it'd be the likes of our rivers, the tributaries, those sorts of things. Anything else significant that I could think of? Obviously our beaches, any significant landscapes.
Natural
Bush reserves or? Again, thinking too
I'm
technical.
quite happy to see a development of that and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we've got a mover, seconder. We haven't all in favour of that?
Aye.
Carried.
Aye.
Thank you.
And then the next one is another map as well. So the submitter raised comments around wanting to see all the background detail underlying our growth assessments effectively and all the different things that you need to look at. Now a lot of them we already look at and are included in the detail section as those pages of different maps. One that was noticeably absent that we do actually consider really in detail when we do those assessments is topography. So I've recommended that the topography maps are added as part of that selection.
Feedback, please.
I'll move.
Moved by councillor Moore. A seconder, please.
You second it.
Mr. Shenton? Mr. Shenton. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, and then that brings us to Sally Patrick's submission. We're on to page 135 of the document now. I haven't actually recommended any amendments as a result of that submission, but I'll take the summary and the commentary that I've provided for it as read. And then moving on to Angus Gordon's submission.
Hi, Angus.
Aye, Angus.
Yeah, and I guess a recognition in terms of the pivotal role Angus played while he was still a councillor in the development of this document and in terms of being the document lead. It was great to see a submission in from him. I have a recommendation around, he made a very great point around making sure we provide the most up-to-date information on government reforms.
Excellent. I'm moving for recommendation 71 from councillor Wilson. Seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And then we had an anonymous.
Just a comment from me here, in agreeing with this. If government legislation and position changes almost on a weekly basis, are you then asking that it is kept current?
Through you, Madam Chair, my anticipation is that when it's adopted at that point of time, and I will keep it current all the way up to adoption.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be called upon to revise a document with every change in legislation.
Councillor Duncan?
On that note, it has been described as a live document, so that does infer that it will be updated. So, am I right? In which case would it be updated annually, biannually?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm anticipating developing an implementation plan that we would look at yearly to implement it, and that we would formally update it if needed at the time periods that it becomes obvious that we need to update it. So I would describe it as an adopted document that won't be live and changed regularly because we've been through such an extensive consultation process. but that should it need to be updated in the future, we could go through a process of updating it.
It won't be updated by us with the RMA changes. It'll be done on an original basis.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
And then the final recommendation is actually along the same lines, but came from another submitter around making sure the document's updated to reflect the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity, which recently was enacted. Which actually, to be fair, could be incorporated.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson's moved, seconded please. Councillor Moore, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Right, so that takes us to the end, and so as I recall, there's two recommendations that we wanted to come back to in terms of determining another process. The first one was around advocating for a mobile health service, and the second one was around investing in enhancements to the campground for Kotiata. One way we could deal with them would be similar to the town clock, that we note that those issues will be addressed by officers separate to the spatial plan process.
Any feedback, people okay with that process?
Yeah, that sounds all right.
Would you like a formal recommendation, or are you happy for me to take that as an action?
I'm happy to be taken as an action.
Yeah, I'd support that.
Thank you.
Right, and then we need to circle back to our final two recommendations of this report. Recommendation 3 is around using the officer comments on submissions as the response to submissions. So from memory from earlier today, there was at least one, if not two, that I noted down that I needed to go through and change.
As amended.
As amended?
As amended, I'm happy to
Yeah,
support.
are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Seconded please. Councillor Lambert, moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Lambert. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And
I'm happy to move for minor amendments.
Second.
Moved by His Worship the Mayor. This is recommendation 4 and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Before we carry on to the next point, 9.2, which is policy bylaw with program update, I just want to thank you on behalf of the committee and the council for the huge amount of work that you and your team have been put into this. And yeah, it's been a huge amount of work. So thank you. We're going to move on to 9.2, and I feel like you're going to be taking through us. You taking us through?
yes, I will take you through the rest of it. You did speed through a little bit faster than I had anticipated. So I will take you through all of this. So this is the update to our bylaw and policy work program. Currently we're working on reviews to 3 bylaws and a policy, with 2 other policies scheduled for later this financial year. Last committee meeting, there was quite a discussion around the development of a smoke and vape free policy. So we've put quite a lot of background information for you there around smoke free, vape free information, the policy development process, and a range of options that you could consider for this policy. So I thank Ms. Etheridge, Georgia, for pulling this all together for us. We've got a recommendation sitting there for you. Our recommendation is actually option E, to delay making a decision on it until we have a chance to have those be involved in those discussions that are happening locally.
Thank you for that. Any discussion? Thank you.
Discussion, and I would move and endorse and support the officer recommendation on that. Not to diminish what I feel is an issue for our country. It's just being aware of the workload that officers have in front of them going into our LTP plan, the current policies that we've got which need work on. I think it's a low priority one. Sad to say it's a low priority one, but I'm mindful of the workload, so I'd be happy to move that we delay.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, I'd like to support Councillor Wilson on this one as well, and also given that there wasn't, as far as I'm aware, there wasn't a single submission around having a policy on this. So it's obviously not a priority for the community, so we're not letting anyone down in the short term, and we can give our staff some breathing space.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, no.
So moved by councillor Wilson, seconded by councillor Duncan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And that of course was what.
Is the report being received? Recommendation 1.
No, we went straight to the.
I'll move for that. I'll move the report be
Thank you
received.
very much. Councillor Moore has moved that the report be received. And seconded please, councillor Lambert has seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Now discuss it.
We moved too fast.
Yeah, my apologies for that.
You're
No,
getting
that's
too far here.
why this committee.
Right, so strategy plan development and review update. Recommendation that the report and review update be received. Thank you, councillor Lambert.
Yep.
Seconder, councillor Moore, thank you very much. So we're receiving the report.
Yeah,
Yes,
received.
yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The thing I would note is the next discussion on the strategic framework review will occur at, I'm aiming for the end of August council workshop. I've got the list of, a little bit of an updated list of where we're at with our strategy development. Yeah, we've got a few on the go this year, but it's really a update.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to go down to reports for discussion items.
Even from I can take us through this one as well. Now, in anticipation of not having a very long time to discuss this item, I've proposed to Rhonda, our communications manager, that we actually do this at a council workshop. So we will not do this item today.
Okay, thank you very much. Any feedback? Everyone okay with that? Makes sense?
Yeah, but everybody's tired.
Yeah.
We're at the end,
Katrina's happy, we're happy.
Yeah,
we're at the end of the day.
excellent.
Yeah, it's certainly a discussion that will require a lot of thought. So I would agree with your stance.
Okay then, I'm just going to go around the table quickly. Your worship, anything to add?
Congratulations, you did a very difficult process well.
Congratulate yourself for answering the questions when I asked you. Councillor Lambert,
No, once again, a very productive policy and planning meeting. Very pleased to be on this committee.
thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
No, nothing. Thank you. Thanks, Katrina, for a good meeting.
Councillor Loudon.
As a guest, it was enlightening and long. But Katrina, well done. Very good.
Excellent. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, thank you, team, but thank you so much, Katrina. You're amazing from the beginning to now. Just amazing. And the document's fantastic. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Shenton.
No, all good. Pleased to be back and re-engaging in this process that we started on quite a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, yeah. And it's reminding me. It's all good.
Excellent. Kezia.
Can we quickly vote on strategy plan development and review update? That was carried.
This wasn't pot, eh?
No, we did.
You did?
Yeah, no, unanimous.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Katrina.
Okay.
Thank you to the chair for allowing us to consider, and his worship, allowing us to consider this item, well, the spatial plan at this meeting, and thank you to the committee for being so engaged.
Oh, well, I just want to thank everyone, again, our committee members, your worship. Simon, thank you for as a, not a designated member of the committee, but having spent 4 hours of your time being here with us. I feel like it's 4 hours. But to the rest of the councillors, the rest of the team, and also for our people that are online that maybe have stayed with us from 1 o'clock to now. We'll post you out a chocolate fish, maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know who you are, but here we are. Thank you very much, and same time in 2 months.
If I get a request through my office for 50
Fast forward.
But thank you very much, and we, before we go, I'm just going to close us off with karakia.
Yep.
He inoi tātou kia tau, kia tātou katoa te atawhai o tō tātou araki a ihi karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, me te wairua tapu, mo ake, ake, āmene.
Amen.
Sorry, everybody.